Thank you, Dhruv. It's such an interesting study. That's one of the reasons we wanted to profile it. And so we'd love to have questions from participants. Again, if you want to ask a question, you can use the chat function and send your question to all of the participants. So we did receive some questions from participants already. One question I think you came back to at the end and reinforced, but Scott asked about what were the reasons for the reason for mobile phone usage. Why did it lead to increases in sales? And I think you addressed that when you talked about the three factors. Maybe just reiterate those and then we'll move on to the next question.
Sure. So Scott, your question was pertaining to what were the reasons, and our tests highlight that the first and foremost reason is mobile phones. Like when you drive and use your phone in the same way in the store, when you use your phone, consumer tends to be more distracted. And what are the effects of this distraction is they wander around the store a little bit more. That means they spend more time. And we know from other research, every minute more that you spend in a store likely translates into some amount of dollars more. As you spend more time, you also walk more, and every few feet that you walk, you are exposed to more products, which means you probably buy more. And as your eyes are wandering, they're looking at items. And as you look at items, you're more likely to, something will catch your eye, and then you'll reach out and touch it and put it in your shopping basket. So those were some of the reasons we tested. I am sure there are others that we could test. The next question I think we see here is from Patrick. Over here, we are all discussing how stores should encourage phone usage. We want 40% sales increase. Do you have any suggestions of how stores should do that? I will let Jens talk about this. Jens, while also being a professor, also runs a store.
Yes, thank you, Dhruv and Chris. I think one way to just go back to the previous question, I think one way of understanding this is that shoppers typically walk around the store pretty much on autopilot. They are very much in a mode where they are task-oriented, trying to just as quickly as possible pick up the items that they are there for. So I think any kind of distraction or pattern disruption sort of makes them a bit bewildered and perhaps look for other things. So I think, because I was trying to figure out why we got so strong effects, and I think that kind of deviation from the autopilot sort of maneuvering, I think that's one way of understanding the results. When it comes to what you can do, what we've done, the company where we did most of these studies have some 1,300 stores, and we have mounted smartphone holders on the shopping carts to ease for shoppers to take up their phones and put them on the shopping cart, and that way also use them. I think that's been quite successful. In the beginning, we also thought about perhaps making it possible to charge your phone while you were using a shopping cart, but we didn't continue that line of thought because we thought it would be too much trouble to making sure that all the shopping carts had the batteries charged so that they in their turn could charge the smartphones. I think another way to do this that we've done in some stores, I do it in my store, is that I continuously ask shoppers to take photos of prices, of recipes, various kinds of information, instead of handing out printed versions of recipes and information slides. So I think that's good in many senses. It makes the store, you become more perceived as more modern as a retailer. You can always say that it's also saving you or saving the environment, and as a bonus, you get this mobile effect. We have made sure that all stores are clearly communicating that there is Wi-Fi free of charge. Dhruv and I were initially talking about correlating the amount of data being used in the store's Wi-Fi systems and see how that was correlated with sales. And if you track that within the same store over between days, then you could sort of get some idea of how effective this mobile phone effect was, but we haven't really come to that yet. But there are a number of ways that you can use to enhance mobile usage in the stores. And I think to us it was really important, to us as a retail company, it was really important to understand that shoppers using their mobile phones is not something that you should shy away from and be scared of. It's rather the opposite. You should make sure to enhance it as much as possible because it's really driving sales.
Thanks, Jens. Tori has a question. Was there any findings on results of use of phones for price checking for competitors and that lowering in store purchases? In our data, it seemed rather limited numbers. So the number of sample size was too small to do any real analysis. But I think if we were doing the same study in a Best Buy or something like that, more in the electronic area, etc., I think this would be an important issue. Those are the areas that at the moment probably are most hurt by Amazon. In terms of Scott has a question. So should stores feed content to mobile phones to keep shoppers more distracted? How about in-store mobile games and contests? And that's a really interesting question, Scott, about feeding content. Jens and I and our team of researchers, we're looking at a host of other content issues. We're looking at what happens when stores provide content such as recipes, and they could provide that content through the mobile phone or the in-store kiosk, or they could provide deals that show what's on a deal. And our results are initial results suggest that the things like recipes creates more engagement because it activates a much larger sense of what you are cooking and why you're cooking and who you're cooking for, and does seem to increase purchases. We haven't as yet looked at games and contests, but clearly that would be a very interesting area in today's gaming sort of environment. We're also looking at other sort of retail technologies, like what happens if you use a self-scanner device. Those are those devices, especially in Europe, most stores have them. You pick it up, you scan your items, it gives you ready-made feedback on how much you're paid, how much you're spending, and does that enhance or detract from your spending. Our initial results suggest that people who are plan to buy certain things, if they use these self-scanners, they actually spend more than what a similar customer who does not use a self-scanner. And our rationale is the self-scanner device, which looks like a sort of, let's say, a mouse or whatever. It brings you a bit closer to the merchandise, which makes you more likely to touch the merchandise. And the more you touch the merchandise, the more it ends up in people's shopping baskets. Another area of technology that we're doing to distract consumers in some ways is we're working with the store to install projection devices in the ceiling, so that at the end caps, there'll be a special ad that would play on the floor and would draw attention to it. And again, that distracts people and disrupts them from their normal shopping, and we can see can create a significant lift in what they buy.
Well,
So,
thank you
so at
very
this
much.
stage, I'll pass it back to Chris.
Wonderful. Well, thank you, Dhruv and Jens. Super interesting work. And thank you to both teams of authors for sharing your research, and to everyone attending today's seminar.